Hello, it is Friday evening, August 29th, 2025. What is going on at the CDC, the Centers of Disease Center in Atlanta? Well, I can tell you I've had a actually productive relationship with the CDC throughout my career. It wasn't until the pandemic where I became very disillusioned. It seemed like the people I counted on for science and evidence-based research were literally lying to the American public. I was flabbergasted when director Rachel Walensky would go on TV, and this is when we knew, like hardcore evidence that the vaccine slash injection, because it really didn't fit the definition of a vaccine, did not prevent the spread of COVID-19. And I remember her going on like every talk show saying, you know what, you get this, it'll stop the spread. If you don't get it, you're going to kill your grandmother. Literally lying. I could have fell off my chair. I was so disillusioned. I was questioning, why would a health professional lie, right? I spent my whole career trying to make patients healthier, trying to educate, and I just couldn't believe it. And the agency had such a taint. Well, then people would justify it. Well, it's just the leadership. It's not the rank and file. Well, come to find out, there's a lot of employees at the CDC with an ideology that defied science. It seemed like they wanted to stay with this mRNA injection theory, that it was good and preventative. And so there was a lot of disillusionment with the advent of Robert Kennedy being put in the HHS director role. And then came a lot of layoffs. So that shook them up. This is an agency who is not used to change. It has institutional norms, right, that really weren't healthy, but they were the norms. So they weren't used to change. So here came a lot of layoffs. And then on August 8th, a gunman had fired about 500 rounds into the building, and it did kill, I believe, a police officer. So they were, really reeling about that. They expressed that they didn't feel like Robert Kennedy was supportive in that. I did do a little research, and I know he put something out publicly. I do not know if he went to talk with the staff at that time or whether he provided any resources to the staff. I'm not sure about that. And then a month into her director role, Suzanne Monterey's gets fired. Interesting. There she is at her confirmation hearing. Now, at the time, Robert Kennedy said she's going to be a good fit. She has a PhD in immunology. She's worked in many government roles. The problem I had then, as I can still express now, is she was part of the cabal. She was one that allowed false narratives to continue. And I can tell you, I have patients up on a pedestal. I would do anything to get them the correct information. I hate it if I ever make a mistake and I don't give correct information. So it's really, really important to me that we're transparent, even if it means we made a mistake in healthcare. And CDC never did that. They never came forward. So the story goes that Robert Kennedy had approached Susan Monterey and said, look, this is a dysfunctional agency. Here's some people I think you should terminate, and I think we should start anew. Well, allegedly, she went around telling everybody that, riling everybody up, and then refused to fire them. So they talked about resignation. Again, the story goes, two people in a room. I can only report what I know. I don't know really what happened. That she agreed to resign, and then she took it back. because she got a lot of support all of a sudden with these employees. She was only there a month in that role, but they knew her. So she got a lot of support. So she said, I'm not resigning and you can't fire me. The only one who can fire me is the president of the United States, in which he did. And then there was all the headlines. Dr. Monterez is saying she's not fired and she's not leaving her position. Well, Robert Kennedy was already moving on and he announced Jim O'Neill as acting director of CDC. Jim O'Neill's been around for a long time. He worked in the Bush administration. Now, whereas Dr. Monterez has a PhD in immunology, Jim O'Neill doesn't have any kind of degree, any kind of medical background. Really, he's known as a big investor in different companies in Silicon Valley. He is just interim. And may I say this? Sometimes the best leaders aren't necessarily, especially if they're an administrator, they don't have to have a degree or have to be in that business. They're looking more at processes. They expect the professionals in the other roles to come up with the science, the research. He's just making sure, dotting those I's and crossing those T's. Well, was it a peer reviewed, blah, blah, blah. Just like we say, doctors made terrible CEOs of hospitals. They didn't know how to run multi-million-dollar, sometimes billion-dollar organizations in all the complexities. But having said that, I don't know Jim O'Neill and I don't know his leadership capabilities. I do know at this time it's going to require a very strong leader because there's a lot of chaos and needs to calm everybody down, reassure and communicate clearly the mission of CDC. It isn't what it's been under the Biden administration, a political voice for the White House. It's supposed to be devoid of all that. So you got to, as a leader, articulate a clear vision, ask people, do you want to come along with that? Even if that means we will do research and maybe your long-held beliefs were wrong, which is okay. And we could acknowledge it and move forward, and we'd still like you part of the organization. But a couple of other names besides the Dr. Horry, Deb Horry, is the chief medical officer and deputy director. She resigned saying, all of a sudden there's changes to the COVID recommendations of the mRNA injections, even though it's science-based. She's objecting to that. Two other people, Dr. Dimitri Daskalakis, led the National Center for Immunization and Respiratory Diseases, and Dr. Dan Jernigan led the National Center for Emerging and Zoonotic Infectious Diseases. Well, that guy, Dr. Jernigan, should have known that the Wuhan lab was doing gain-of-function research and that the Chinese military were using that manipulation of the bat coronavirus as a bioweapon, trying to develop it as a bioweapon. But we never heard a word from him. No, we didn't. When Dr. Fauci's emails came out that he was suppressing science voices that said, you're trying to say a narrative that this was spawn in nature, that it jumped from the bats to humans, and the genome sequence or genome sequence, however you want to pronounce it, clearly shows a manipulation. He targeted those poor doctors, those poor scientists, try to ruin their reputations. Dr. Fauci's a bad guy. But let's go to clip one as Caroline Leavitt, the press secretary for the White House, reacts to Dr. Dimitra's resignation.
I understand there were a few other individuals who resigned after the firing of Ms. Monarez. One of those individuals wrote in his departure statement that he identifies pregnant women as pregnant people. So that's not someone who we want in this administration anyway. So if people are not aligned with the president's vision and the secretary's vision to make our country healthy again, then we will gladly show them the door.
Caroline, can I just go?
He is quite radical. A lot is being made that he happens to be homosexual. I tell you, I can only speak for myself, could care less about that. He's pretty flamboyant. But again, you have to be honest with people. And when you're a medical personnel, to say pregnant people, there's only one gender that can have a baby, and that is a female, a biological female. Even these men who take hormones and get what is it called? A vaginal plasty, have their penis removed and a fake vagina put in, they'll never have a uterus. That is our blessed house of carrying children. And women were the ones blessed by God to have the uterus inside of them. So for him to deny biological facts and just keep this false narrative going forward. Literally, the CDC released guidelines for men who want to breastfeed. Of course, they don't call them men. They say they're trans women, but they'll never lactate. They'll never, ever lactate like a woman. They cannot breastfeed like a woman. So to me, see you later, right? You don't belong in this environment because you're anti-science. But again, Dr. Monarez and Dr. Horry and Dr. Dusalakis, they all got each other rallied up and they decided to protest. We're going to protest because we want to keep to our ideology. Let's go to clip 2. If he was well loved, hey, say goodbye in a respectful way. But I have a sense this was a little more organized than a spontaneous little protest, and that maybe some of those people are paid people. But, again, you can disagree on something and still respectfully part ways. I'm so happy that these people are leaving. I really am. They did nothing to protect patients during the pandemic. And I don't trust them anymore. I don't know a lot of the research behind many of the vaccines. I only know a lot about the mRNA. And I'm telling you that should be taken off the market. The new guidelines are for 65 and above, or anybody who the doctor may warrant needing it. There's never a need. We do a risk benefit analysis, and the risks of the mRNA injection are far too great. COVID is not even a worry anymore. So I don't think we do enough to stand up. And so if they turn over the whole staff, I wouldn't blink an eye. I wouldn't be concerned in the least bit. As a matter of fact, I think people might be healthier. So Caroline Levitt, she had to field quite a few questions today about what's going on at the CDC. And I'm telling you, it's going to take through change. You have to manage change as a leader, an experienced healthcare leader. And I could move myself to a big hospital, small hospital, and I could go to any kind of business because leadership skills. Some are learned, some are just inherent, but you have to know when to intervene. And certainly during chaos and change is not the time to stay away. It's actually the time you should be most active with the remaining employees and be out in front of the media. But Caroline responded to Dr. Deborah Horry's resignation in clip number 3.
And thanks for being here, Brandon.
Caroline, thank you so much. First, on the firing of the CDC director,
Sure.
Who will replace her? And then also, overnight, the White House said that she did not align with the president's agenda. Dr. Menard's attorneys say that she refused to rubber stamp unscientific, reckless directives and fired dedicated health experts. What specifically did she do wrong?
Look, what I will say about this individual is that her lawyer's statement made it abundantly clear themselves that she was not aligned with the president's mission to make America healthy again. And the secretary asked her to resign. She said she would, and then she said she wouldn't, so the president fired her, which he has every right to do. It was President Trump who was overwhelmingly reelected on November 5th. This woman has never received a vote in her life, and the president has the authority to fire those who are not aligned with his mission. A new replacement will be announced by either the president or the secretary very soon, and the president and Secretary Kennedy are committed to restoring trust and transparency and credibility to the CDC by ensuring their leadership and their decisions are more public-facing, more accountable, strengthening our public health system, and restoring it to its core mission of protecting Americans from communicable diseases, investing in innovation to prevent, detect, and respond to future threats. That's the mission of the CDC, and we're going to make sure that folks that are in positions of leadership there are aligned with that mission.
And briefly on another topic, alligator.
I apologize. That clip was labeled for me as Caroline responding to Dr. Deborah Horry's resignation. She was responding right there to Susan Monarez, Dr. Monarez firing. She actually got terminated. And of course, she's lawyering up, which is her right to do so, but why not leave gracefully? We need a big shakeup over there at the CDC. And again, I believe that we will be healthier and move forward. I would like a review of the entire vaccine schedule for children. We are learning that many of those vaccines never had peer review research. Are you kidding me? I can tell you there's differences in generation. You'll hear some people say, well, I never had a problem, or we never saw autism in the 60s or 70s. Vaccines were different. Number one, we didn't have as many. Number two, we had what used to be called live attenuated vaccines. So it was actually a real virus that was being injected into you at just enough amount to have your body respond and reject it and create antibodies to it. So those people who got COVID got antibodies. So the antibodies would fight it if they ever saw this virus again. And of course it mutated, blah, blah, blah. So I'll go back to John Adams' day. President John Adams, our second president. It was smallpox was getting pretty rampant in the New England area. And in Quincy, Massachusetts, his wife was alone with all the children tending to the farm while he was, I don't know if he was president at this time or he was in the Continental Congress. So I'm not quite sure why he was away at the time. But a doctor said, okay, you know what? This smallpox is killing people. What can we do? So he literally took from somebody who had smallpox, poked the pox, took out some of that smushy stuff, the virus, and pricked Mrs. Adams, pricked the children. Now, some of them got pretty darn sick, but they all survived, but they created antibodies to it. So we've changed through the years. Of course, we no longer do any kind of smallpox vaccine because we eradicated it. That is a great success story when it comes to a vaccine. But recent vaccines are filled with all kinds of chemicals and dangerous things. So we do need to reevaluate. And I don't think people should be afraid of it. If you are a provider, And you'll see I use this term a lot because you have a doctor, a medical doctor, and you have a nurse practitioner, a board certified nurse practitioner like me. They can diagnose and treat patients. Nurse practitioner can diagnose and treat patients. That means both can order labs, x-rays, do procedures, suture, treat, and prescribe medications. The biggest difference, really, and doctors will hate to hear this, is nurse practitioners don't do surgery. And oftentimes they don't get into, well, I think that's the biggest difference, right? Because now we have nurse practitioners who do specialize in emergency medicine, neurology, cardiology. Very different schooling. My schooling was, yes, of course, I learned medically about the disease process, but I also looked at the whole environment of the patient. Are they living alone? Do they have money to buy food? You know, you have to look at why are they so unhealthy, or what's contributing to all the falls? Do we have to send somebody in the house to do a risk assessment? Maybe they're tripping on rugs, you know, the whole thing. But that's why I use the term providers, because nurse practitioner is not really a good name. People think when you say nurse practitioner, you're talking about a nurse. Well, many nurse practitioners started as registered nurses. Not all. And I don't agree with that, by the way. I think you should start as a nurse, emergency department experience or ICU experience, best both, and then go on for your master's degree and go to nurse practitioner school. I knew of a program when I was in Tennessee where you could have a bachelor degree in anything like engineering, and then you could go on to nurse practitioner school. I think it puts them behind the 8 ball, but okay. So I started this with, don't be afraid that you were going along with the CDC and the vaccine schedule and you never looked up the research, right? We have to have some trust in the industry, and you trust that the people who are supposed to be looking at the research, supposed to be performing research, would give you correct information. So I don't blame the providers. But now that there's so many questions that are coming up, you kind of owe it to get involved, to look into it, to look under that rock. So I don't want to all my peers out there, don't be afraid. Don't be worried that people are going to blame you if we do find out that some of those childhood vaccines are actually dangerous or may help cause autism. What we should do is actually eagerly want to look at them so we can help patients. Again, that should be our mantra. But let's move on to the Minnesota shooter, Robert Westman. Evil, evil man. Changed his name legally with the mom's permission at 17 to Robin. Had a little bit of a troubled background. The mom there in the picture is at her retirement at the Annunciation School. Her name is Mary Grace Westman. She is not cooperating with police, and she has hired an attorney. Well, I've heard people the entire day then saying she knew something was up. She's protecting herself. I'm not really sure, right? We shouldn't rush to judgment. We have seen some parents get convicted. There was a shooter whose dad actually bought the guns, and the kid was a troubled kid. So maybe that was right that those parents did get a jail sentence. So maybe she's just being cautious. Now, there's been false reports that Robert was living with his mother, and I think that's what fueled this. She had to know something because he had to be in and out of there with massive amount of guns. We've all seen the video now. His bed was covered with ammunition, plenty of magazine rounds. He was not living with her at the time. According to the dad, who has now surfaced, he said that Robert/Robin was living with somebody, had a breakup, romantic relationship, had a breakup, moved in with somebody else. So I just caution people, the mom may be perfectly innocent. I tell you, we need to look at solutions. I can go on about the attacks, about prayer. Why doesn't the Democrat Party ever learn they're saying the kids were literally praying. Good. I'm glad they were praying. I'm glad they have that comfort. Many people believe in the power of prayer. It doesn't mean that's all we're saying we're going to do is pray, but why not pray? Why not offer all of them hope and some comfort? If that's what they believe in, Jesus, Christ, God, some people believe Jesus was just a prophet. Well, whatever their belief is, prayer is only healthy for them. And to know that the country is praying for them. But the Democrats had to go right away and attack prayer. Like they're attacking the victims. It's crazy to me. It's so crazy. Have some compassion. Have some empathy. I've been racking my brain all day. What can we do? Can churches all afford security guards? I know the synagogues in New York all hire private people to. Would this have helped in this situation? Maybe not. If the security guard was inside the church, this lunatic was firing from outside. So we just have to look at ways to protect our children. And I tell you, so we have these forms when you buy a gun, and you're supposed to self-disclose if you have a mental illness or if you have a criminal record. And you do a background check. Wherever the gun is being sold, you're supposed to do a background check. Okay, you can certainly look up a criminal history. How do people look up a mental health history? Right? I'm thinking if I saw this guy coming, he just looks, you're going to say I'm judgmental, but I can't help it. I've had years of experience, and sometimes we know a lot with our eyes. I would have known this kid was off. Could I have delayed say his background check came back, no criminal record, and he checked that he has no mental illness. He's not on any medication. Okay. Do I think there might be something off just the way he looks? Maybe. Could I then call the state police and say, is there a way we can look in to see if this kid has been mentally ill or on any medications? This guy was so fanatical and so radicalized. He wrote in these journals and these manifestos, and he wrote in Cyrillic, which is very difficult language. Could he have written in English and had a translation app write it? Yes. But it was in Cyrillic. And basically, he hated Black people. He hated Jews. He hated Christians, Catholics. But most of all, he hated children. He idolized any mass murderer who killed children. He was obsessed with the thought of killing children. When he went to that church that day, he absolutely knew what he was doing. He absolutely knew what side of the church the children sat on, and he tried to target that way through the stained glass. So to blame the children. So here he is. This is like looking at himself. He's looking in a mirror, and what looks back kind of looks like a devil figure, doesn't it? Obviously very, very sick. Did anyone pick up on those signs? How do we strengthen that? I don't know when it comes to purchasing a gun in mental illness. We know Minnesota has very strict gun laws, but he bought it legally. So we have to look at that process of trying to figure out who should not have a gun. And I know, people will say, well, that then it'll end up in court. Someone could get denied who's perfectly fine. I hope not. I just want to start a conversation because I've seen these kids. Well, Hunter Biden, he lied on his application too when he purchased a gun. He said he wasn't a criminal and he wasn't doing any drugs within a 5-year period, and that was a complete lie. So sometimes you got to just think people are telling the truth. I don't know what the solution is, but we have to have a conversation. We have to have a conversation without blaming the victim, blaming Catholics. Do you know there's been like 400 attacks on Christians or churches in 2025 alone? There was a priest killed in Kansas. There was churches set on fire. I believe even yesterday something happened at a Georgia church. Maybe the Mother Mary statue was defaced. So it's a hate crime. What do we do about it? We've done big campaigns about anti-Semitism. Maybe we do a big campaign on anti-Catholics. Again, we have to have conversations and we have to have round tables. This is complicated because we have a constitutional right to bear arms, and we shouldn't change that. We've got to keep that Second Amendment rights, and nobody's going to come after my guns. I'm telling you, nobody is. But how can we make sure that people who are a threat to society don't get them? Now, bad guys will always get guns. I used to speak a lot in Chicago, and the gun violence in Chicago has been legendary for decades. This isn't a new thing. So I used to, obviously my conference was in, a very nice neighborhood, beautiful, very little crime. But in the south side of Chicago, people up to 50 people a weekend were getting shot. Always, mostly black on black crime. But if you believed in Black Lives Matter, why weren't you patrolling more, mayor and governor in Chicago, in those black neighborhoods? Because innocent kids were also getting shots. But I used to be a wise guy. I used to go into a storefront and say, geez, I heard you had, 42 people who got shot this past weekend. How does it feel like you, as a good guy, as a shop owner, you can't carry a gun, but all the bad guys can? And I don't know if they were brainwashed or what. Sometimes they'd look at me. They always engaged me in conversation, but again, they were in a pretty nice neighborhood and they didn't feel that threat. So President Trump has been talking about taking the National Guard and going into Chicago. I have mixed feelings about that. I do agree he had perfect grounds in the District of Columbia. He has the ultimate responsibility of the district. I'm not sure about other states. I wish they would partner with him because he can do magic. I do know he has increased ICE agents going into Chicago, but he wants to do more. Why? Because he cares. But the race baiters have tried to change that narrative, and they are saying he's only going after black cities where there's black mayors. I think that has nothing to do with it. I've seen tons of black people on television saying, President Trump, don't listen to our mayor, don't listen to our governor, come. They don't live in our neighborhoods. I've lost a cousin, I've lost an uncle, blah, blah, blah. So it is a complicated issue, and we'll see. I think President Trump is weighing what is the right decision for the American people in the safety of the American people. Well, I am going to take a short break, and I'm really excited on my next segment. Guess what? We're going to talk about election integrity. Stay with me.
Whether it's being a weekend warrior or spending time with your family, feeling your best is the key to doing the things you love. That's why I'm excited to tell you about Nirvanta. It's a natural solution designed to help you stay active and live well naturally. Nirvanta is a topical blend of all natural essential oils like frankincense, myrrh, and a proprietary gold standard plant stock extract. It's perfect for your hands, feet, knees, back, or anywhere else that needs a little extra care. Use Nirvanta proactively as part of your daily maintenance routine, and you're guaranteed you're going to feel the difference. Simply massage Nirvanta in for at least 60 seconds, 2 to 3 times a day to get the best results. And if you're not completely satisfied, you get your money back. No questions asked. There's simply no risk and no reason not to try Nirvanta today. Right now, you get 15% off with code Lindell exclusively at nirvantahealth.com. So stop reaching out for that medicine cabinet. Get Nirvanta instead and experience the difference. Go to nirvantahealth.com. Use code Lindell to get 15% off today. Nirvanta Health. Live well naturally.
Welcome to Vocal, the free speech social app that gives you a platform to amplify your voice. Speak freely, connect boldly, and be part of a growing movement for truth, faith, and freedom. Want to know what's happening right now? The Now Playing feature shows you exactly who's live and what's streaming in real time. Check out the show's feed, a non-stop lineup including Lindell TV News 24/7, shows and on-demand programming all in one place. Connect with your favorite host and never miss a show. Explore the featured page for quick access to Lindell TV's top shows. Follow your favorites and watch their newest content flow right into your feed. And when they go live on Vocal, you can join the live chat and be part of the action. Ask questions, share your thoughts, even help shape future shows. Stay informed on issues around securing our elections by following your state's Cause of America account. Join a group and connect on a deeper level, from faith and freedom to the future of our nation. Go to vocal.com or download the app today and be a part of the mission to save our country.
Welcome back to the show. I run into people every day who ask me, what is the Trump administration doing to make our elections safer and have integrity? As you know, Mike Lindell, the owner of Lindell TV, which is the network I'm on right now, has spent a lot of his personal money, and you've donated a lot of money for him to look at election integrity. He initially started looking at machines and the fact that they are not secure. Almost all of them can connect to the internet. And once you connect to the internet, you can be hacked. Again, those who know me know I've suggested to you many times to look at the 2015 film Kill Chain. At that time, all of the machines that were used in the United States were brought to Las Vegas, and hackers were invited to come in to see if they could hack the voting machines. Guess what? 100% of them were hackable. They were all hacked into. And at the time, you had Democrat senators like Amy Klobuchar and Bernie Sanders screaming about it. Oh my God, our elections aren't safe. These machines are not safe. Well, in 2020, they were silent. They wanted to hide that they had concerns previously. So there were so many things that happened with that election. Remember the pandemic, and the pandemic was used as an excuse for mail-in ballots. We know they're not safe. The integrity of mail-in ballots weren't safe. And that's really what kind of Rudy Giuliani focused on. Sidney Powell kind of looked more at the voting machines. And so it was such a short amount of time, and unfortunately, the courts didn't want to hear it. Giuliani was involved in one court case, and the judge didn't want to hear from the witnesses. Where do you go from there? So he decided brilliantly to take the cause with the local witnesses. So if you were from Georgia, he arranged for those witnesses in Georgia to go in front of the legislature of Georgia. Same in Pennsylvania, same in Michigan, because believe it or not, the legislators did not realize they were responsible for the elections. They could delegate it to an election committee, but they were really responsible. So I want to show you a little clip of the State Farm Arena in Georgia,
which allegedly shows people taking out at least 4 boxes of ballots from underneath a table and then counting them after hours with no election supervisors present.
So the same person who's staying behind now, the same person who cleared the place out under the pretense that we're going to stop counting, is the person who put the table there at 8:22 in the morning. Yeah, I saw 4 suitcases come out from underneath the table.
It is believed that each box consisted of 6,000 ballots. If accurate, that would amount to about 24,000 potential votes. One state lawmaker questioned the validity of the video.
The question is, since this has been debunked repeatedly, what evidence can you give to us?
Okay, can I just say that video was never debunked at all? There was different narratives spewed, and then Brad Raffensperger allegedly edited it. Now, there are about 6 people in that room, and our eyes don't lie. But more importantly, Well, let me get to my next guest. I'm really excited to have him on. Garland Favorito, who is the co-founder of Voters Organized for Trusted Election Results in Georgia. Welcome to the show, Garland.
Thank you, Maria. It's great to be with you. It's good, always good to see that video again. It should never die.
It should never die. Now, that female voice you heard was Attorney Pick. She's the one that the video was given to her by a concerned citizen. They debunked that it was ever manipulated, and she brought it to the legislature. She never touched it. She just brought it straight there, and she narrated throughout it to the legislatures. Since then, there's been a lot of editing of the video, editing it out, them scanning multiple times. But okay, say everybody's eyes were deceiving them, Garland. You weren't seeing them scanning multiple things. Did they or did they not break Georgia law by continuing to count ballots after people like the public was excused? Because as far as I knew about Georgia law, you could have public there. They always had to be in there. You need to have observers. Is that correct?
It is correct, Maria, and the statute that you're referring to is OCGA 212406. That is the public transparency statute for the state of Georgia. And that statute shows that there were multiple violations in that State Farm Arena video, which I've explained in detail in court cases and several other times. But let's walk through it again. And in fact, before we even do that, let me back up for a second. You know, Jackie Pick cannot edit that video, or nor could Rudy Giuliani, even if they wanted to. So the claim that they had edited the video is a lie. It is not editable. It is a proprietary video stream, and there is no way to edit that video to make it show anything other than what it actually shows. And there's no real dispute about what it shows. It's just that they try to claim that it's edited in order to deceive people about the potential of criminal activity that it went on in Fulton County for the 2020 elections. So let me just back up. I'll go through the statute, since you raised a really important question that all of the audience should know, regardless of what they believe about what happened in 2020. But the law, according to this statute, the election transparency statute, which is 406, I mentioned earlier, there were multiple violations of the law, and I was there in that room. And the first violation is that the room itself is curved. So as an observer, they stuck you, and including me, in one corner of the room, and we could not see around the other corner to see what was going on. So that's the first violation of Georgia law. The second one would be the skirted tables. Now, there's no reason to have a skirted table in an absentee ballot processing center. Everything, again, has to be transparent. So having the skirted table was, in fact, I would consider a second violation, because nothing can be concealed when you're processing these ballots. The third violation would be to hide the ballots underneath the table. Why would you have to hide them under a skirted table? That is another question that really has not been answered. And those are all 212406. Now we get to your other point, which was and even before we get there, there was the fact that I guess it was Shay Moss who came out and said, we are concluding the counting and scanning, opening of ballots for the evening. You are welcome to go home if you want. The elections, the monitors who were there hung around for about 30 or 45 minutes to compare to the video after she made that announcement. And it wasn't until 45 minutes later when they finally decided to leave. And just as soon as they had walked out the door, they pulled these ballots out and started counting or scanning the ballots right after the monitors had left. Those are the facts that are on the video. Almost anybody can see that for themselves. They don't have to take my word for it or yours or anybody else's. They can see that video themselves and see what happened. So then you also mentioned the potential double scanning of ballots. You'll see, if you watch that video closely, you'll see one of the elections workers there handing back the ballots to the individual in the red shirt, who was actually the supervisor. He's an interesting story. I'll tell you about him. And they'll hand them to other clerks, and they will double scan some of those ballots. We have since found out from expert witness testimony that 3,900 ballots were in fact double counted and double scanned in the Fulton County 2020 election results. Then finally, the interesting thing about this is the other individual back there in the red shirt was the former head of the processing, absentee ballot processing, Ralph Jones, and he also was also head of the absentee, not only absentee ballot processing, but he also had oversight on the voter registration system. So if you were so inclined and you had non-compartmentalized security, which was, in other words, one supervisor over both functions, then you could, inconceivably, if you were nefarious, you could have enter so-called counterfeit ballots and then check somebody off on the voter rolls as voting those ballots. And we had many people who complained to us about going in to vote and finding that they had already had a ballot cast for them, and even though they had never cast an absentee ballot. So that's just a little background of the issues with the 2020 election that have not been resolved yet. The Fulton County has fought for years to refuse us from seeing the ballots from the 2020 election. When the audit was conducted, the senior poll managers found counterfeit ballots in the hand count audit on November 14th. They knew they were counterfeit because they were mail-in ballots. They were not folded from being mailed. They were marked with a writing instrument, not toner. And they were marked the same way down ballot for dozens of ballots in a row, and those ballots were not on the correct paper stock, according to the sworn affidavits. They've never been allowed to testify about this. In our case, we have 2 active cases right now involving the counterfeit ballot situation in Fulton County, and the Fulton County judge has been sitting on the case for over a year after we won standing in the Georgia Supreme Court in December of 2022, when another judge falsely claimed that we didn't have standing. We sued and got that overturned, one of the landmark decisions in Georgia that could have some national implications. So that's the whole background of that State Farm Arena video and where we are now, Maria. I know that was long, but I know a lot of people really need that background.
Yes, because they've been having a lot of propaganda around it. Even if you Google it, Google is so biased. They won't show any conservative papers or news reports. It's always their narrative. So I always get concerned about Google, and I tell people not to use Google, but I think all the search engines are a little bit biased. But Garland, my point being, they broke the law. What is that, a fine? No, and was there 6 people in that video? Did any of them get disciplined?
No, not at all. Now, the supervisor, Ralph Jones, was eventually, we believe, forced to resign. He did resign. The others, I think Shay Moss and Ruby Freeman are no longer there. I believe the other two, I'm not sure about where they are, but so they may have departed. There might still be one or two there. But to your point, Maria, nothing has happened. Part of the reason that happened, nothing's happened, is because the Secretary of State's office, and in particular, Gabe Sterling, the chief operational officer at the time, claimed that that was normal ballot processing, quote unquote. We still have his social media post about that. And it is unbelievable because I just quoted you statute after statute, and we never even got to, there's even more statutes about double scanning of ballots. Bottom line is that Secretary of State Brad Raffensperger, Gabriel Sterling, and the new legal counsel, and she's been there for some time now, Charlie McGowan, have basically said that nothing was wrong, and they said that we don't have any right to see the ballots, and which is absurd because we actually got the law changed to even further clarify that the people of Georgia do have a right to see ballots when there's a controversial election. And we still haven't seen them yet because the Fulton County Court will not force Fulton County to see the ballots, which would reveal evidence of Fulton County corruption, we believe, once the ballots are shown. And that's why we are continuing to actively attempt to get these ballots for the benefit of every single Georgia voter and those in America, because remember, this was a federal election that influenced the outcome of not only the presidential race, but the U.S. Senate race as well, which was forced into a runoff after President Trump and Senator Perdue had insurmountable margins. And even Brad Raffensperger told NBC the morning after the election that Trump had an insurmountable margin. And the few 2% of the remaining ballots would not be enough to overcome his lead, even if they were all counted for Joe Biden, which they were not.
Garland, I can tell you're a man of integrity and you want election integrity for all. This is not a Republican issue. This is a Democrat. We all should be appalled with what happened in the 2020 election. And you don't have to answer this question. It's a personal opinion. Why do you think Brad Raffensperger lied to the American people, and especially the people of Georgia?
Well, it's a good question. And before we even go there, to illustrate your point, Voter GA is a nonpartisan organization. We have been nonpartisan. We were established 20 years ago, as you can see, up to 2006. And for the first 15 or so years, the majority of our members were Democrats who were very concerned that they got cheated out of the 2002 gubernatorial race here in Georgia, as well as the Senate race. I believe that they were, in fact, cheated. And they have been basically the core of our support, along with libertarians and grassroots Republicans who believe they were cheated in the primaries. So it is, to your point, an incredibly nonpartisan issue. Now you got to the $64,000 question, which I wish I had a solid answer for, which is, why did Brad Raffensperger do this? Why is he continuing to do this? And we don't really have a solid answer for that question. First of all, he has done everything he could to bring in these flaming anti-Trump liberals as contractors and subvert our elections, and it would take a whole show to talk about that. But we do have a document on the voterga.org studies tab that will explain all of that. It's called Republicans Rejected Raffensperger, and So Should We. And it explains why the Republicans rejected Raffensperger. And
I can keep you all day, Garland, but I got to wrap up here, and I hope you come back. You have so much knowledge, and I appreciate you, and I want this better for future generations. Thank you again.
Sure thing, Maria.
Wow, a lot to digest. Make sure you go to that website. And thank you for joining me. Have a lovely Labor Day weekend. I will see you next week.